Overseas basketball isn't all the same. That means depending on where you are, your reality, expectations, and playing experience may all vary. So today what I want to show you guys is where and what league and country you should be targeting depending on your skill set so that you can maximize your chances of succeeding in overseas basketball. So let's get right into it. Now let's start off with Latin America. Now this is the continent or the region that I'm most familiar with. I played the vast majority of my career here. Playing style that is going to be most successful here is going to be an athletic player, one-on-one game, transition basketball. When you go to Latin America, you're not going to expect, for the most part, too much ball movement, too many running through sets. You're going to be expecting a lot more of athletic guys who can go get a bucket, one-on-one, going in transition, scoring. So if you are a system guy or somebody who is really dependent on running an offense, that's something you become accustomed to, you're a catch and shoot guy, it may be a little tough for you in Latin America because not only are imports expected to be scorers, to be athletic, but they are so dependent on in Latin America. So you're going to be matching up against other guys who are extremely athletic, very versatile, can do a lot of different things. And it may just come down to a simple fact of if they're getting 30 points and you're only getting 15 a night, that might be it and you may be cut. Now, obviously with all of these countries and all of these continents, there are always going to be exceptions. Mexican first division, Brazilian first division, Argentina's first division, Uruguayan first division. These are going to be very well organized teams, some of the best teams in the continent. They're going to have a lot more ball movement. They're going to have a lot more team structure. It's going to be more like a European type style of game where there's screen rolls, tactics, a lot more like that. But if you are in the lower divisions or even the mid-tier divisions in Latin America, these leagues are going to be really dependent on you to be athletic, to go score. So if that's not what you're about, then maybe it would be a good idea to look at another continent that could be more helpful to your skill set. When you head over to Europe, and I'm also going to bunch in Australia in this combination, you are looking at a completely different game. You are far removed from the one-on-one game, from the individualism that you see in North America and Latin America, and instead you're focused much more on a team-oriented game. There's a lot more cut-in, there's a lot more sets, there's a lot more ball movement. So in these environments, you're gonna expect less shots, but you have to be more efficient with your shots. So no longer is it gonna be like in Asia or in Latin America where they are dependent on the imports to score 30 points, to play all 40 minutes, to guard the other team's best player. Because quite frankly, for speaking honestly, the nationals are very capable, they can play well, and they're very prideful too. And they believe that their basketball is just as good as North American basketball. So they're gonna treat their nationals and give them responsibility in that way. So they're not gonna depend on you, say you're American, they're not gonna depend on you to come in and just save the team in that way. So who would benefit most from these environments? Players who are high IQ, good catch and shoot players, good teammates and personalities on the team. And as well, I would say the player who is a bit less athletic, I would say Europe is for you because in general, the Europeans, yes, they are bigger, but for the most part, for what I've seen, they're in general a bit slower. Obviously that will depend on your country, so I'm not trying to bunch everyone into it. But for the most part, if we're going to compare continents, I would say that would be a benefit to you. Now, when you get to the Middle East and Asia, I'm going to bunch these two together. It's kind of like Latin America, but on steroids. Similar to Latin America, you're going to be able to have to get a bucket, do it all, score. But one key distinction between the two continents is that in Asia and in the Middle East specifically, a lot of these countries are going to have import restrictions in terms of how many imports can play on the court at the same time. So not only are you going to have to be able to score and produce, but unlike in Latin America, when you're playing in these lower tier leagues or these middle tier leagues in that continent, you're even going to have minute restrictions placed upon you. As weird as it sounds, if your teammate is killing it on the court, that's kind of your competition because you two can't share the court together. So you have to get in there and you have to do whatever it is that you do. If that's rebounding, blocking shots, getting everybody involved, lockdown defense, you got to do it and you got to turn on the switch right away. There's no easing into the game in a lot of these continents and a lot of these countries. But another consideration that you have to keep in mind is that in a lot of these Asian countries, typically the average demographic there is going to be smaller than say in North America or in European countries. So that means a lot of the players are going to be smaller. So they're going to be looking for bigger guys, or not only bigger guys, but bigger guys that can do it all: rebound, block shots, shoot, score. So for that reason, if you are a big guy and you are serviceable, then I would really recommend that you look for Asia. And finally, the last continent that could potentially benefit you is Africa. Now, Africa is such an interesting continent. It's such such an interesting location right now because of ball, which is going on, the Basketball African League. It has been exploding over the past few years. And when you look at Africa, it is going to be a very athletic continent. For the most part, there's a lot of good shot blockers who come on here, a lot of athletic players. So you're going to need both a balance of skill set as well as athleticism, because in general, Africans are thought of as playing a very aggressive style of basketball, very athletic, up and down. And you can see that in ball now. These teams go up and down. They have big players. These are some very athletic, very skilled teams. So I would say that Africa, if you want to succeed there, you would need a combination of everything that I've just mentioned. Okay, so what does this all mean for you? What I take away from it is that you have to be realistic of your own skill set, of your own abilities. Now, that does not mean that you won't be able to get to a continent or get to a region that you want to be, but you have to be strategic and you have to understand what type of players are thriving in this continent. So for instance, when I first came to Latin America, when I first started my career out in El Salvador, I was for the most part just a catch and shoot shooter. I was a system player. And when I got to El Salvador, it was like a shell shock to me because I told people all the time, it was like glorified open gym. It was like a pro-am run where it's just one-on-one, my turn, your turn, and there's not much movement. There's not much system going on there. And at the beginning of it, I actually struggled a little bit. I was averaging less than I wanted to. In the summertime, when the summertime hit, I just said, hey, look, you can't change this beast. You know, I'm just one player. This is how I'm gonna have to fit in. And I started working on more of shoot off the move shots. And I also worked, more importantly, I worked on my one-on-one game so that when I got the ball, I didn't have to depend on anyone else. I didn't have to wait on a system or a set. So I was able to actually elevate myself. That's when I started to win scoring titles. That's when I started to really find myself. Don't think that just because you start off in one region that you can't get to another region, but you have to understand what the region is demanding. What is your playing style? And most importantly, you cannot stop improving and working on your game to be the most well-rounded player that you can be. Now, if you are in a specific region, like so for instance, if I was going to Europe, what I would do that whole summer is I would just work on basically catch and shoot, limited dribbles, being the most efficient player that I could be. But if I was starting my career in Latin America, I would be in that mindset of trying to get into more pickup games, trying to go one-on-one, trying to play off a pick and roll, just basic concepts like that. So you can actually train yourself, improve your chances depending on where you go. But this is the key. You got to keep it in mind. And if you do that, I guarantee your chances of success will be higher versus you just going blindly and you don't understand the market and what is demanded. Now, obviously, this is just one tip of the iceberg. This is assuming that you're already over there. So, you know, before you even get there, there's so many things that we have to consider. Your basketball resume, highlights, how you communicate with coaches. When are you sending these messages? How are you sending these messages? If you're interested in crossing over to professional basketball, then please give this channel a follow and subscribe to it, because that is what it's committed to. It's all free. It's all at your disposal. I'm just trying to help the next generation, whatever they want to do, because I never had something like this growing up. And I know I would have killed for someone to help me and give me some direction, at least in terms of how to succeed at overseas basketball. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time, okay? Peace out.